To share with you a gift that was given to so many of you. It's one of our songs on the journey that our sisters who are missing and murdered. And we ask that you sing them home, as I often say. And in this song, it talks about how we were a part of Creator's life and Creator lived with us. And Creator had to leave as a two-legged person, and the people prepare for Creator to leave. We don't get to do that with our missing and murdered. So I wanted to share this once again with you to give you strength to send our sisters home who we can't bring home. And it's that song. And I've asked each of you to learn the O's so that you can sing them home. Each of our languages are different. That's why we offer that. Give to you from my clan and my people. Sing our sisters home. Chapuno Yulie, Chapuno Yulie, Aluyam, Chapuno Yulie, Tokame, no shuno, Tokame, no shuno, Hewatu, Chapuno Yulie, Aluyam, Chapuno Yulie, oh, 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 Naqualium, Wanaqualium, Malum, Wanalum, show, oh, hey, Wanaqualium. Oh, yeah, Wanagua, hey, Wanagua, hallelujah, Wanalum, show, oh, hey, Wanagua, let him go. Whoa, whoa. Oh, whoa, oh, whoa, 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 for all the missing and murdered sisters. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 hey, oh, Mio, this is Wana Michael Dixon. I am Payokuchan, the people of the West. I am from Palma. I'm also Mahila, the clan of the dove and the moiety of the bear Hunutam. I am humbled and honored to be a part of this week, let alone a part of the life and journey we're on together to do the work we do. Shoulders, Amara.
Thank you. My name is Shannon Holsey, and I serve as the president of the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohican Indians. I also serve as co-chair with my sister, Dr. Wana Machel Dixon, for the VAWA Task Force. And as she had stated, it's a pleasure to be here today and to have this important message to all of you and in joining us in an upcoming important week that we hope that you'll all join us with. Anishik. And thank you again to our sister for that strong prayer and starting our third National Week of Action, honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women. As Indigenous people, we understand our connections to the four directions, heaven, earth, and our Creator, to help us guide as spirits on our human journeys. And as Indigenous women, we understand that we form the backbone and the lifeblood of our nations. Missing and murdered Indigenous women are unacceptable and preventable. Indigenous women have experienced a spectrum of violence unlike any other population in our country. How many more Indigenous women must go missing or be murdered before the federal government acts? During our 2023 National Week of Action, starting today, May 1st, we ask you to do the following things. Honor Indigenous women who have been missing and murdered. Support surviving families of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Support community healing. And finally, call for local, national, and global changes that increase Indigenous women's safety and restore sovereignty. Our schedule for this week is on NIWRC's website.
You know, when I think about NIWRC, Shannon, I liked your words. You know, they begin the journey of a conversation that we have in our hearts, sometimes stuck in our throat, you know. And the work they're doing, along with NCAI, you carry such a strong arms and hands to hold the bucket of spirit and honesty and truth. When I know the families, the tribal sovereigns, the Indigenous leaders who have spoken out against the violence against our Indigenous and tribal people and our women, stories of our people talk about the cloud people. They talk about how they arrived before what was understood history is written. And these stories of many nations talk of these journeys of people coming in their world and of our grassroots and how we have organized and we gained this groundswell where it's like the earth begins to breathe and it opens itself up and the bearers of seeds put them into the earth to grow. And we're in that place right now, you know, and when I think of what you said and how we organize and the groundswell creates and the movement of the woman's feet on the earth and the sound of their movement is heard for generations. So the generations after us don't experience what we know. When I think the fact that the lawmakers have come together and began to look at ways to resolve as the laws like Savannah's Act. It's a beginning of a long journey. And as we get captured in the thought of what a president must do and issue proclamations recognizing this time, recognize that the fifth is a national day for missing and murdered. When I said to you earlier that we will not be able to be there when our sisters are found, sing them home. And if this is the way the president could pick a day to choose to sing them home, and we use those 7 days to do so, we'll do so. But I think of the systemic barriers that remain in place as we hear from the daily podcasts that of our people and our nations are speaking of, not just our women, but our children, of the relatives who speak about it. When I think about how the Indigenous folks across the nations talk about it, when I look at that door, that big gate in Puerto Rico where they sent the people through to be enslaved in these other places, and how many of those places along the way mark the death of the people. And the work we do on a national, international level is prevalent. As I looked at those barriers and hear those podcasts, the information sharing, I began to look at what is the journey of a sovereign on which we have. The world doesn't like that. They don't like the fact that the U.S. acknowledges its sovereigns, but I don't ignore the relatives of the islands, the relatives of the seas, those similar contentious times that they have to go through. And they are citizens of their own country, but they're also tribal citizens. You know, they didn't give up their sovereignty as a people, but their leadership had to change in order to exist and the coexist, whether it be with the church, whether it be with the leadership of the state leadership in their communities, or the federal leadership in their communities, of the communities across the world, when we have witnessed what this world is willing to do, but it's scared and frightened, when it gets to this place of placelessness, which we have seen and witnessed. When we look at the fact that our Indigenous women, as they engage in their tribal family communities and the coexistence, and how, as women of our nations, we hold the heart and love of the child who lost their parent, who lost their mom. It's their ancestors along the way. When I think of the governments and to remove those systemic barriers, identify solutions, we know them. We speak in their words. Are they listening? When I look at what the church has done, when I look at the Center of Health and Safety, and I look at Catholic Church is a very good example, not just them. There are many. When I traveled in different nations, I saw many different religions do the same thing. But when you look at what's so frustrating and what they teach our young still today, it are the concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of Indigenous peoples, of our tribal peoples, of our tribal sovereigns. We have not given up our sovereignty, and we paid a big price, you know. And when I think of the fact that in that doctrine of discovery was one step in the right direction, but it didn't complete the step. You know, when I think of the church continues to use the papal bulls as a way to gain entry into our world, and to do it in the name of their God, to do it in the name of their deity, to do it in the name. How dare we say that? But the thing is, when you look at the responsibility of violence against our tribal Indigenous women, has been long sanctioned by necessary by building a nationhood on our blood, on our bones. We bring up the bodies of our children and we see their elongated arms and carrying those heavy stones to make their churches. When I think of the families and advocates in Indigenous nations who have done the similar same things, when I look at what's growing number of allies across the borders, it's real. When we speak to one another, when they talked about our South American folks and our Central American folks and the North American, the eagle and the condor meet, that was significant. Did it mean anything to the Americas that weren't a part of those worlds? Similar in the journey of the fires, when the belly of the fire of the earth explodes, it's an awakening of the grandmother saying, I'm here. The earth mother, when I look at the family advocates and how they do what they do, we didn't give up us. I didn't give up the us and me. You know, I am a we, and all my relatives are we to me. We are that intrinsically tied. And I think even though we have different tribal languages, spiritually, it's a common ground. And when I look at the women who either go missing or murdered, and to get the language of the non-Indian world to understand what that means to us, was a long dialogue for almost 6 months. Is it going to be missing and or murdered? They're gone. And yes, some of them are murdered. Many of them are murdered. You do not even know the numbers, yet you keep asking for those numbers. Would it make a difference? It should not be about the numbers. When I look at the borders and the numbers of allies that we build across the borders, the challenge of the silence and the inaction of government, societies, and the response to missing and murdered, I see this world go through changes because of COVID. But I also know our people from traditional perspectives knew that this journey would come to where we'd be in this place of placelessness. Doesn't mean we forget about our people. Seeing my sisters home, seeing my relatives home, as I will sing yours. In some of our world, as we look at the missing and murder, what walks are being done, what local, tribal, and other communities are doing in searches and campaigns, we have seen people step up to back us up in searching. We also seen the missing and murder when we look on the mountain looking into Mexico, how many are being harmed. The number is staggering. It's in the thousands. And this year, when I look at the marathons and the marches and the walks and the candlelight vigils, that will rise up. It will rise up so strong that the spiritual well-being of our nations will awake with the strength to say, enough is enough. When I look at what local communities choose to do and how they put that campaign in the world, I watch America's World and viewing media. They're now speaking of their own people. They're now showing shows of their own people. They are walking and talking the talk. Join us this coming week. Join us as the sovereigns of this country, of the indigenous folks of these areas that belong as our relatives. When I look at the attention, the documentaries that will be done, I too will give breath to those words. And I'll put that fire, let that incense grow, and I'll let it rise. What I want to look at is how I see the marathons and the marches and the walks and the documentaries. You film your steps. You take pictures of your mountains, of your valleys and your seas. You capture the coast. You hear the winds move because that spirit is dancing and walking with you. You are releasing them. When I think about the unaccountability, not holding predators, perpetrators accountable, reason, and I don't understand, other than the fact it goes on to the ism side of this, where we are not significant enough to protect. With or without you, we're going to protect our people. This is what we do as sovereigns. This is what we do as the women of our nations. When I think of our relatives and this led grassroots group and exposing them to these things, I can't help but wait to hear the voices of my sisters speak. My sister Shannon will speak to you. She will share some things with you as she understands them. And I welcome to hear her words. Please take the time. Show us all our relations.
Anishik, 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 Sister Juana. Profound words my sister just shared, especially those that continue to repudiate those concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of all Indigenous peoples. And she had said, and she had expressed the interconnectedness around this issue. I am she is me, and we are all interconnected. And this is such a vital issue in the erasure, and it requires all of us. It requires to be seen, heard, and advocated for. As my sister had said, we will continue to fight for what is right, and we will continue to rise up our voices to make sure we bring breath to this important issue. This year, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, our MMIW Family Advisors STARS Indigenous Safe Housing Center, the National Congress of American Indians, Indian Law Resource Center, the Alliance of Tribal Coalitions to End Violence, Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, Strong Hearts Native Helpline, and the Pohana Ona Wahine and Rising Hearts have partnered to organize our third National Week of Action that we will launch today, May 1st through May 7th. In addition, thank you to the Vedon Foundation for supporting NIWRC's MMIW advocacy. We call our nations and to the world to action to honor our missing, murdered, and Indigenous women, including calling on the United Nations to declare December 6th as an International Day to end femicide. We encourage all individuals, governments, and organizations to participate in our vital events and support actions to your communities this week. We also call upon our tribal leaders and federal agencies to participate in yearly government-to-government consultation on violence against Indigenous women. These Indigenous-led local grassroots actions expose systematic barriers that my sister talked about and compel the passage and implementation of tribal, state, and federal legislation and more human response from everyone involved. So join us in saying enough is enough, not one more stolen sister.
My ears are full. My heart is strong. Thank you, sister. When I think of the gift that was given to you as a leader and myself and those of us who join this journey, if it were not for Ohana and those doing the work they do as well, our relatives across the islands, this relationship with the U.S. government, and protecting the indigenous protective systems. Because they don't do what they're supposed to do. They have no idea what that means. How our gifts of our relatives from generations, unmeasurable in many ways, have prepared us to weave the fabric of the earth and its waters in our hands, and to carve and gather the earth to make those things we need. As we mold the bowls to restore the full authority back to the tribes of Alaska, bless the American and Alaskan nations, to protect their indigenous people, to understand the jurisdictions of a tribe over those who harm them is very normal, common sense. Acknowledging that as a nation, as the US government, recognizing and respecting the indigenous responses of our native Hawaiian communities, Samoa, Puerto Rico, Marshall. It's all there. Our relatives to the south, speaking with the Maori, understanding how we're related, how stable of the stars that we have, and the elongated arm they have that reaches to us. You know, these stars are recognizing and respecting them, ensuring adequate resources for advocacy and services for all indigenous folks, but not at the sacrifice of the sovereign indigenous women of our nation who've done so much. Don't carve our money up because you're not wise enough to know that there is the money there for all of us to do what was done to us, to fix, to heal. Don't pit us against one another. We will fight you. I know this to be true. I'm raising my young ones up to prepare themselves for the journey they put me on. When I think of encouraging adequate resources for advocacy and services for indigenous people in sovereign nations, it's very real. We get 3 cents on a dollar. When we have no way to change that, removing the systemic barriers is one thing, but implementing, understanding, facing survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault was a missing and murdered indigenous women. That is very painful. Not understanding how the medicine of our people is. When you think about the fact that there is a way that the first person who was harmed so many generations ago has to come through that healing process to bring the wholeness to the wellness side. The journey we will take our relatives on, that's not in your budgets. That's not understood, but it has to be done. We don't question how you spend the church money because you have separation of church and state. We don't. Not in that manner. When removing those barriers, implementing through federal resource response to MMIW, why would there be a question? You know, when I recognize that both land and indigenous women are sacred, when I know that the earth is our mother, giving birth to all that is, it's logical. When I look at the legislation policies to protect them, you know, but I am not going to stop protecting the four-legged, two-legged, and the winged creatures of the sea and the air. But I'm not going to stand and let you hurt us more. I will fight you. This is not something I ignore. I take it seriously that when you speak in one language and mean another, we're not stupid or ignorant. We had to learn your language so we would know when you lied. But our people are missing because you're not responding in a good way. I have watched what Secretary Holland has done. I'm humbled by her steps. celebrate the strength of that secretary in the midst of this government. And we will stand supporting them with all the tribes who have stepped up to do this work. Implementing through recognizing both the land and indigenous people are sacred. Pathways to safety and balance and thriving for everyone is the centering needs of our Mother Earth and the women. Join us this week. Come celebrate us this week. Come cry with us this week. Come eat with us this week. Drape us in cloth and dance. Do the social media. Sing our sisters home. Celebrate that we accept all that you give us. We won't accept any more of our tribal indigenous women going missing and murdered. With the humbleness of hearts and the shakiness of my breath and the tears in my eyes, I thank you. Oh, so around. Shannon.
Anishik sister, thank you for those beautiful words and the strength in your spirit and your will to continue to fight and to do what's right for our sisters now and into the future. We will not forget.
Mai kako, aloha to all, warmest welcome. I am Rosemond Keanui Pettigrew, Kanaka Wahine of Molokai, Hawaii. Hawaii is a place of with gorgeous beaches and beautiful landscapes that we Kanaka o Iwi, aloha, and malama ka aina kupuna. It also has a side that deals with trauma and crisis of missing and murdered Kanaka Wahine, indigenous women of Hawaii. The Pacific Ocean is 63 million square miles, and it is the largest and oldest existing ocean basin containing more than half of the free water on Earth. Its pohaku, or rocks, have been dated at approximately 200 million years. Kanaka Maoli is defined as indigenous person or real people. The first contact with Kanaka Maoli had with the outside world was 1778, when Captain James Cook sailed into Waimea Bay on the island of Kauai. From this first contact with colonizers, Kanaka Wahine and girls have not been safe and remain vulnerable and at risk of human sex trafficking, going missing, and murdered. Hawaii's 8 main islands are located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where millions of people travel through each year from the continental US to Hawaii, Asia, other Pacific islands, and around the world. In addition, the military presence in the islands is of concern, with personnel coming and going, which exacerbates the situation and creates an additional risk to the safety of Kanaka Wahine. This is not to say that only outsiders or travelers misuse and abuse our wahine, but our island people, families, and those who swear to uphold the law and serve the people. Though the pandemic reduced the number of travelers to the islands from around the world, it did not diminish the concern for the safety of our wahine. Hawaii lacks statistics to address the crisis we know exists. This reality has to change through state and federal legislation, requiring changes in the collection of data by government agencies, as well as state, county, and federal law enforcement, service providers, hospitals, and the military. Adequate resources must be made available for research and to implement sufficient documentation practices for reporting with dedicated staff. This information is critical in addressing this crisis. Together we can make a difference. Mahalo kako. Thank you, everyone. Puli kako. Kama lama lama o ke akua e ho'opuni mai ia o ko. Ke aloha o ke akua e ki puni mai ia o ko. Ka mana o ke akua e ho'opakele mai ia o ko. Ke alo o ke akua e malama mai ia o ko. Ma kahia o ko e hele aku ai he akua no. Mai ka piko o ka po'o, a me ka poli o ka wāwai, a la mana ki he aha e ha o ke kino. Amen.